estimated that around 170,000 people go missing in the UK each year, while the majority are found. There are still 1% of cases unsolved 12 months later.
The disappearance of Jay Slater, who's been missing in Tenerife for more than 2 weeks, has highlighted the difficulties for everyone involved in these cases. So, how do families cope, and does the search ever end? Well, journalist and host of the podcast The Missing, Pandora Sykes, and former detective and missing persons expert Charlie Hedges have witnessed firsthand the utter pain and agony that families go through. Good to speak to you this morning. I don't think we can imagine, because our hearts go to losing somebody that, you know, and finding somebody that we love goes missing, but we can't really know. And of course, this agony goes on, doesn't it? Pandora, should we come to you first of all? What do you know of what people go through?
Before I started work on The Missing, I had no idea about the concept of the long-term missing. As you say, the vast majority of people are found, but about 4,000 people are missing indefinitely in the UK at any one time, and they are known as the long-term missing, cases that are more than 3 years old, that haven't been solved, that are not being actively pursued by the police, because obviously they cannot keep endless investigations going indefinitely. And for the families interviewed for The Missing, I mean, it's agony. You can imagine there's no closure. They just want to know what happened. They want to be at peace with what happened to their loved one.
It's absolutely desperate, isn't it? And Charlie, you know, you're a missing persons expert. It must be very difficult for people. And are there people that, I mean, thankfully, the stats are that most people do get found. Are there any ways of categorising or understanding why some people don't? Or is it all individually dependent?
Each case is different. What's important is that the circumstances are understood when the report is taken, the person who's gone missing is understood, and an assessment of risk is made to filter out which are the most important cases and give them the most urgent attention. That's not to say the others should be neglected, but there needs to be a triage process to deal with them in the right order and give them the right level of attention and the right level of investigation.
And how is that triage done? Because there is concern, and I think Adil and I have both experienced that we get individual messages on our social media saying, no one is looking at this person's been missing, please help us. And it's sometimes hard to know how to help or what they're really arguing for, these people, other than the desperate finding of their loved ones. How is that triage of focus looked into?
Well, there's a model which has been developed over many years of a set of questions for the officers to attend when the report is made, to try and get all the information they can about the individual and the circumstances to make the assessment. One of the risks that is sometimes fallen into is it's easy to think, well, they are just one of those many that will go and come back. They're just another missing person. And sometimes that influences the way that the case is looked at, and means it's not dealt with quite as effectively and quickly as it should be.
Yeah. I remember last year, actually, there was a report by Missing People, which is a charity that tries to bring awareness about missing people that perhaps doesn't get coverage in sort of mainstream media, if you like. And one thing they highlighted was a worrying picture and a disparity that members of the Black and Asian communities, they said, suffered the most because if they were children or people from those communities, they were more likely to be missing for longer than white children, and that a lower proportion of missing incidents related to Black and Asian people were resolved by the person being found by the police. Why do you think that might be, Charlie? I mean, that's a really worrying issue, isn't it, that there are prejudices, and if for families who are missing their children, those first, as you know, the first 24, 48 hours are vital. Really worrying that there's a different treatment for perhaps white children than there would be for Black and Asian children.
It's something that's being explored with some urgency at the moment to try and understand exactly what's going on, and it's not fully understood yet. There are some issues across all ethnicities where people are reluctant to report cases missing, and what we call the missing that never get reported to the police for various reasons. But it's really important that each case is looked at properly and understood, and regardless of any of those issues about ethnicity, they should be reported in the same and an equal way.
And Pandora, supposedly we all in the media, and we have a part to play as well, and the media is often accused of perhaps, centering on certain cases because we feel it might get bigger ratings and get more coverage. Are there lessons to be learnt for media in general about how we look at these cases?
Absolutely. That study that you cited, there's been numerous studies over the past 10 years, and there's a name for it, missing white woman syndrome, because it has been shown through data that young white women, middle class, conventionally attractive, educated, will get a lot more traction in the news than, as you say, people from Black and Asian backgrounds, a lot of the time people who are older, men, and that can be to do with a lot of things. Sometimes it can be what else is going on in the news cycle, but a lot of the time it can be that they are, newspaper editors are looking for a story that will get column inches, and there is a bias, like there is a bias in many things, that means that that person is often young and white and middle class.
And do you feel enough is being done? Is this really being treated seriously and being looked at the moment?
I think people are talking about it a lot more. I remember in 2021 when a young woman called Gabby Petito went missing in the States. She was travelling across America in a van with her boyfriend. It actually turned out, as obviously sometimes very sadly it can, that he was guilty of her murder. But when she was missing, there were a lot of stories, a lot of people talking about how we need to change the way that we are talking about missing people. And sometimes it is those cases are not reported. There is mistrust in the police, which means that some families don't come forward in the first place. But from the media side, there's a lot that we can do. And I think a lot of learnings were taken actually from Madeleine McCann when that case was being covered for a very long time. Tens of millions went into that case. There were lots of children who weren't white, who were going missing, who we were not even hearing about.
Well, it's very good to speak to both of you this morning, and let's hope by highlighting it, it brings a result that those people affected really want, and they're reunited. Yeah. If you have been affected by any of the issues we've been discussing, you can find advice and support at itv.com/helplines.